Well, it looks like Sega's back at it again with a brand new themed year. While we are fastly approaching June now, I somewhat thought that Sega was going to skip out on doing a year, but here we are with the newly introduced Racing Around the World. The newest yearly campaign themed all around Sonic racing. And it's obviously pretty fitting for what's been announced already for this year in Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. But with this being the third themed year for the Sonic franchise, what can we expect from Racing Around the World? So the biggest way that we can look into what's going to be happening this year is the official website of Race Around the World. And if we look into the news section of the website, we can see a few things listed. First being them talking about their partnership with Red Bull and the famous stunt racer in Brandon Semenuk, which I'm probably saying incorrectly. But he was featured in the reveal trailer with a Sonic themed car and chasing after Sonic throughout the trailer. It's a pretty cool reveal for a themed year, and they even go into more of a realistic looking Green Hill Zone where characters like Shadow, Knuckles, and Rouge appear. Showing off some new looking models for the characters, and whether these models are planned for something else is unknown, but unlikely. The models in my opinion look okay, I just don't see what else they would use them for, as they don't really look like something that would be used in a game, but maybe a future promotion. And why they nerf Rouge like that? But jokes aside, they also did go ahead and feature a remixed version of White Cave from Sonic Riders. Which sounds great, and I'm guessing that this is going to be the remixed version that we're going to get in Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, as that's already a confirmed stage inside that game. But moving on to the next listing shown on the website is Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. This doesn't list any additional info about the game, but to be honest, what's going on with CrossWorlds? Like, why don't we have an official release date yet? Don't get me wrong, I'm beyond excited for this game, but I think it's odd that the game was announced back in December, and there's been a few news updates since then, and even a play test for online play for PS5 owners. But still, nothing on the release date. And what makes that kind of seem a little crazy is it really seems like we're coming up really soon on the release date, as it seems like the game is pretty far along in development. And even supporting that statement is that in Australia, the game has already been rated, meaning that this game could be coming out very soon if they're already deciding to get ratings out for this game in different countries. But keep in mind, Mario Kart is also going to be coming out in the beginning of June, so I have a feeling that it would be more of a July release date if we're going to be getting it soon. I would imagine that Sega is trying to avoid having the same issue that Superstars had against Mario Wonder, as that obviously didn't work in Sega's favor last time. But the game looks extremely promising, and I can't wait for it no matter what the release date is. But the other news consists of merch where it isn't just Sonic merch featured in there. You have merch that just has Shadow, Knuckles, or Rouge available as well, which is great, as considering a lot of previous merch stuff just only ever features the main kind of cast of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. I have countless shirts at this point that just have Sonic on there, or even just different pieces of merchandise. So I'm glad that I have that option to be able to buy just Knuckles merch, or just Shadow, or just Rouge, considering someone like Rouge rarely ever gets merch. And not only that, they ended up getting an entirely new render for each of these pieces of merch, which looks great, and I'm super excited that not only Sonic, but all these characters got new looking renders that look super good. But lastly, we have an extremely pixelated photo of a teaser of something saying coming soon. And I think it's pretty obvious on what this is, as this is obviously Sonic Speed Simulator getting a world based off of Metal Harbor from Sonic Adventure 2. And while I personally haven't touched this game really since release, seeing Metal Harbor love from Sega or any official Sonic thing is always great news. And I mean, hey, maybe I'll get back into it just for Metal Harbor, as I'm sure that will be a bunch of fun for people that love Speed Simulator. And moving on to the news category, and the last notable thing to talk about on the website is the character descriptions, where if you select one of the characters on the screen, it'll give you a brief description of what this character is all about. What's kind of odd is some of the characters that are featured on this list, as it's only limited to Team Sonic, Team Dark, and Eggman. Considering that Sonic Racing CrossWorlds is obviously going to be their main focus of the year, you'd think they would feature a lot more characters, or simply even just Silver and Blaze. Because Silver and Blaze have been characters that have been featured in previous years inside of the character description. I know it's a bit of a stretch, but could this potentially be teasing at something that could be featuring each of these characters? Potentially a game, a show, or maybe even like a Sonic Heroes remake, something along those lines. I guess it is a bit of a stretch, but they could be hinting at something here with these specific characters. And while that's all great and a good starting point, let's take a look at some of the previous years like Fearless Year of Shadow or Fast Friends Forever, announcing things like the Sonic Symphony World Tour or new partnerships like Lego Sonic. Or, in my opinion, the most notable being that each of these years so far has featured a re-release and a new game. Where Fast Friends Forever had Sonic Origins Plus re-releasing the classic games, but also newly released Sonic Superstars. And the Fearless Year of Shadow having both in the same game, but the re-release of Sonic Generations, but also the newly released Shadow Generations. Meaning that this has become somewhat of a trend between all of these themed years, but what game could possibly be re-released this year? I think the main games that we need a re-release or a remake of is Sonic Riders and Zero Gravity. These games, in my opinion, are not only the best racing games in the series, but also two heavily loved games by fans. This would not only be fitting as these games are long overdue for a re-release with online play, but also would be matching of the year's theme. And it would also be fitting as the Babylon Rogues are returning in Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. I mean, come on Sega, Riders is right there. It would be a perfect pick for a re-release, and maybe some new racers featuring new extreme gearboards or some new tracks. This would actually be chef's kiss to a perfect re-release. But they could also consider remaking Sonic R. And I say remake as I think that a re-release would just be too small of a game. As Sonic R is a pretty old game, but it also only has 10 playable racers, only 5 tracks, and also meaning that you can 100% this game in 15 to 30 minutes. I think alternatively, you could put this in a collection game like Sonic Gems Collection and package it with fighters, or what if you just did one big collection game? Having a collection game of all the racing games would be super cool to see, and also a huge way to be able to play these older games on modern day consoles and PCs. You could include games like All the Drifts, Sonic R, Riders and Zero Gravity, All-Stars Racing and Transformed, keeping all the core racing games in a collection. I don't think you need to include Free Riders in that, even if it was made to be a controller compatible game, and I know a lot of people think that that would fix this game, but as somebody that has played the controller mod for Sonic Free Riders a while back, the game, even with controller, is still boring, as it was made to be played with the Kinect and not a controller, unless they made some really drastic changes to that. But considering if this was a collection, I doubt they would do that. Team Sonic Racing could be in it, but it is still a pretty big game, and it's still a fairly recent game at that. So I have a feeling that Sega wouldn't include that in there, as they're probably still trying to make some sales off that game, still being a little bit more recent. And this is still somewhat of a bigger game when it comes to the racing games. But this would not only allow new players to play all the classic Sonic racing games, but also allow them to have online multiplayer functionality, adding way more replayability to these games. And they could also add DLC or some updates to the game, but I think a simple re-release and at the minimum giving them online play would be more than enough for an amazing re-release. But then again, maybe they won't re-release anything and CrossWorlds is going to be their main focus on this year, especially with them already confirming DLC for that game to be added at a later date. But for racing around the world, we can definitely expect a lot from CrossWorlds, merch, and collaborations from Sonic and other companies. And hopefully another re-release with some new updates. But I can't wait to see what this year fully details for Sonic, and I think that this is a great pick for 2025, considering 2026 is going to be a jam-packed year. As if you don't know, next year is Sonic's 35th anniversary, and some renders have already actually leaked for that year. So maybe this year will end up being a bit more calm, being the calm before the storm of Sonic's big 35th anniversary. But let me know what you guys would think in the comments and what you're excited for that's already been announced. I'd love to know what you guys think, and with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.